Imagine that you are a work of art, a painting, but not just any painting, a very valuable, unique painting.
The artist never made anything like it.
He created you brushstroke by brushstroke from the deepest desire of his heart to make a unique and perfect work. He visualized you even before touching the canvas with the brush. Every stroke of the master was perfect, measured with the highest precision by the creator of the universe. He planned you perfectly. He used the best materials so that his work was perfect. That's right, unique and perfect. Now stop imagining and know that you are exactly that. Nothing more, nothing less. A masterpiece, unique, irreplaceable, and perfect just the way you are. The book of Ephesians, in its 2nd chapter says, because we are God's workmanship. That word comes from the Greek word poiema, which means thought, very well made, that has been the work of, or the poetic work of, or the poem. So, there you have it. You are a poem of God, a work of art. But what would become of that perfect work if its beauty cannot be fully contemplated? That is, in the case of painting, instead of appreciating the original colors, all we see is a gray palette. Something's wrong. That work of art is not fulfilling its purpose. So, be that poem that inspires. Make your colors shine. And even if some don't appreciate you, don't worry, because when was a work of art depreciated just because someone didn't understand it? Just like me, I am an abstract work of art. Very abstract. Now come with me. I want to show you something of great importance for this city related to art. In the historic center of Mexico City, right next to the Alameda Central, is the majestic and imposing Palacio de Bellas Artes, Palace of Fine Arts, one of the most beautiful and iconic buildings in this gigantic city, which incidentally is one of the most famous opera houses, renowned in the world. Just being in front of this venue is enough to realize the magnitude and importance it represents to art. Impressively, it took more than 30 years to be inaugurated. And here's the story. The original idea was that it would be inaugurated in 1910 for the celebration of the centennial of the independence of Mexico. The enclosure began its construction in 1904 and was finally inaugurated on September 29, 1934, after several decades of gestation. This majestic piece of architecture was designed and directed by the Italian architect Adamo Boari, who was also in charge of the construction of the Postal Palace, or Fifth Post Office, which is next to the Palacio de Bellas Artes, and the Expiatory Temple of the Holy Sacrament of Guadalajara, which is one of the most important neo-Gothic works in Mexico. In 1902, the president of that time, Porfirio Diaz, invited Adamo Boari to Mexico to carry out some commissions that the president had planned for the celebration of the centennial of the independence of Mexico. In 1904, the construction of Bellas Artes begins. However, due to the beginning of the revolution, a project that should have been delivered in the first months of 1910, due to issues such as technical problems, subsistence issues, economic problems, the work was partially interrupted. Boari had to leave the country in 1916 due to the political problems and, above all, budget problems. Although, to everyone's good fortune, he left more than 4,000 documents and plans of the work that years later would serve to finally finish the work. Since the country had achieved significant social and economic stability in 1931, after all the post-revolutionary issues, the construction of the Palacio de Bellas Artes was resumed. It was Federico Mariscal, a prolific and great Mexican architect, who was in charge of the project. 3 years later, on September 29, 1934, Bellas Artes was inaugurated with the play The Suspicious Truth by Juan Ruiz de Alarcón. Palacio de Bellas Artes has two main architectural styles that were very much in vogue at the end of the 19th century and at the beginning of the 20th. Art Nouveau, a style that came to prominence mainly in France, and Art Deco, a slightly later style from around the 20s and 30s of the last century, inspired by the first vanguards, that is Cubism, Constructivism, and Futurism. The fact that Palacio de Bellas Artes took 30 years to build has a lot to do with the fact that these two styles converged in this amazing piece of architecture. The exterior is markedly Art Nouveau in style, and it was Boari who was in charge of working on it during the first decade of the last century, unlike the interior, which has an Art Deco style and was finished in the 30s by Mariscal with his specific contributions to the original project. Some of the most outstanding architectural elements are, of course, its very remarkable main facade, which is made of Carrara marble. The cherubs and the sculptures that represent music and inspiration, the columns and the balconies, the impressive dome, and in the square that is in front of the palace, the remarkable monumental sculptures that represent Pegasus, and that the Catalan sculptor Agustí Querol Subirats made. Well, if this is the outside of the palace, how does it look on the inside? Do not be surprised when you find its spectacular finishes in marble from different origins. The details of the chalk masks in the light panels, the dome designed by Boari, the impressive murals by Diego Rivera, José Clemente Orozco, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and Jorge González Camarena, among many others. It's a pity that I didn't have access to the main room, but I can tell you that it has capacity for 1,667 people. And another feature that is unique in its class is the huge curtain with the representation of the Popocatépetl and Iztaccíhuatl volcanoes, which was made at the Tiffany House in New York. The crystal lamp in the center of the ceiling with the representation of Apollo and the muses of the arts. Here, these are presented regularly. The National Theatre Company, the National Symphony Orchestra, the National Opera Company, the National Dance Company, in the Manuel M. Ponce and Adamo Boari rooms, literary, editorial, conference, and exhibition activities are presented. On the second floor, Museo del Palacio de Bellas Artes is found, in which there are excellent exhibitions of Mexican and international artists, sculpture, painting, engraving, photography, etc. And on the top floor is the National Museum of Architecture, one of the best kept secrets of the Palacio de Bellas Artes. Temporary exhibitions on contemporary architecture are presented in this venue. Likewise, you can learn about the extraordinary collection of some of the most renowned Mexican architects. Models, plans, and photographs of works by Luis Barragán, Adamo Boari, and Jaime Ortiz Monasterio, among others. Palacio de Bellas Artes is our jewel in the crown, in terms of culture, since it's the cultural venue par excellence in Mexico, where the most dazzling operas are premiered, and the most important companies and orchestras in Mexico are based. Some of the most important art exhibitions of this city are presented here, and it has also been a traditional place of mournful tributes of some very influential characters in our culture, such as José Clemente Orozco, Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera, Juan Rulfo, Rufino Tamayo, Cantinflas, Octavio Paz, Carlos Fuentes, Gabriel García Márquez, Leonora Carrington, María Félix, among others. Diego María de la Concepción Juan Nepomuceno Estanislao de Rivera en Barrientos, Acosta y Rodríguez, better known as Diego Rivera, was born in Guanajuato on December 8, 1886. He was a Mexican realist, cubist, and muralist artist. Mexican artists Diego Rivera, David Alfaro Siqueiros, and José Clemente Orozco make up the triad of the greatest representatives of Mexican muralism. A pictorial school that flourished from the 20s of the last century. The fundamental characteristics of this trend are the monumentality, which aims to achieve a greater range of communicative possibilities with the popular masses. Some of the gigantic murals exceed 400 square meters. The break with the academic tradition and the assimilation of the pictorial currents of the European avant-garde, Cubism, Expressionism, with which Mexican artists had the opportunity to come into direct contact, and the integration of the revolutionary ideology in painting, which, according to them, it had to artistically express the problems of their time. During the 1920s, he received numerous commissions from the government of Mexico to create large mural compositions. In them, Rivera abandoned the artistic current of the moment to create a national style that reflected the history of the Mexican people, from pre-Columbian times to the Revolution, with scenes of vigorous and popular realism and vivid colors. Famous in this sense are, for example, the scenes that evoke the presence of Hernán Cortés in Mexican lands, the arrival of the conqueror on the shores of Veracruz, or his meeting in Tenochtitlan with the Aztec sovereign Moctezuma Xocoyotzin. José David de Jesús Alfaro Siqueiros, better known as David Alfaro Siqueiros, said that he was born in Santa Rosalia, today Camargo, Chihuahua, on December 29, 1896. However, according to his birth certificate, he was born in Mexico City. He was a Mexican painter and soldier. He is considered one of the three great exponents of Mexican muralism. José Clemente Orozco Flores was born on November 23, 1883, in Zapotlán el Grande, later Ciudad Guzmán. He was a Mexican cartoonist, muralist, and lithographer. Graduated from the National School of Agriculture. He also studied mathematics and architectural drawing. I truly hope you enjoyed every image and this brief tour, but most importantly, remember that you are a masterpiece, a poem, inspired by the eternal Creator. Thank you and stay blessed.